Hi, this is Jessica. Welcome to my channel. I'm an AI CPA or US CPA, but right now I'm working in an HK CPA firm in Hong Kong. So sometimes I'm auditing those companies that are holding the properties in Hong Kong, and some of them only holding properties, to earn the rental income. So I have some knowledge and information about how those companies operate, and I get a better understanding about those real estate market in Hong Kong. In last video, I did a comparison of the rate of return of holding a property both in Hong Kong and in other places and countries such as United States. In all, we got to know that there are so many perks of holding a property in Hong Kong, such as there is no property tax, there is a relatively low down payment, relatively low mortgage interest rate. You can also enjoy the increase of the property value in the future. In my previous video, I did some calculations, so I reached out the result that every year you can get approximately 2.5% annual return if we hold a property and rent it out. But somehow, if we consider about those outgoings, that is also some type of expenses we have to consider about when we're holding a property, such as repair, maintenance, insurance, etc. So those would also offset the profit you earn from the rental income. What are those outgoings, and is it constitutes a large percentage of our rental income? So let's just list all those things that we have to consider about properly. The first and most material outgoing is the government rental rate. This is just like some kind of tax we have to consider about. Actually, so many people consider this as the property tax in Hong Kong, even though in Hong Kong there is no as what we construed about in United States. In United States, the property tax is just like tax for those who hold a property. So the property tax would be like the percentage of the current market value of property that they own. However, in Hong Kong, there is no such tax at all. But there is some kind of similar tax we have to consider about is the government rental rate. But it's not like a apple to apple comparison. So the government rental rate is like approximately 8% of the estimated annual rental value of the property we are holding at the designated valuation reference data provided by the relevant government called the Rating and Valuation Department. In this department, every quarter they would estimate the annual rental value of your property and would issue demand note, and according to this note, they would calculate the government rental rate to you, and you have to pay it quarterly. Let's say I have an annual rental return like 2.5% of your home current market value. This means that the government rental rate is like no more than 0.2% of the average home value. Let's give a brief introduction about what on earth is the government rental rate. It's just like two things. So the government rate is like, the tax you pay for the government service and to support their daily operation. The tax is just like the rate of the estimated annual rental value of your property according to a specific valuation reference data. So this percentage varies every year, which is determined by the Rating and Valuation Department. I remember that last year and also in this year that the percentage doesn't change at all. It's just like the 5% of the estimated annual rental value. So concerning about the government rent, it's just like a certain thing, unlike the government rates, which I mentioned earlier, that rates varies every year determined by the relevant department in government, but the rent is just like a fixed percentage. Let's say the 3% of the estimated annual rental value of the property we are holding at the designated valuation reference data. Probably you would wonder why we have to pay the rent. The property is owned by us. But in Hong Kong, it's totally like a different thing. Even though you buy the property, but the property doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the government. This sounds strange. In United States or in other places, in those Western countries, the land and also the buildings that putting up on those land are all belong to the landlord. In Hong Kong, the property belongs to the government. The government leases out the property and land for a relatively long period of time. Let's say for certain properties, they can be like 150 years lease, or for another properties they even have a 999 years. So those are stand on your land search. It's like a land certificate which states that those properties, even though they belong to the government, but the government lease out those properties to you, so you can use that for a long period of time, maybe hundreds of years. So in this way, because of this reason, because of this concept, those landlords have to pay the government rents every single year. But it's not all those properties in Hong Kong have to pay the government rents, and in certain areas you don't need to pay the government rents. For example, those are the buildings, properties in Hong Kong Airline and in the New Kowloon south of Boundary Street are exempt from the government rent. This is because of some historical reason. This is very interesting. So probably 100 years ago, those areas that is in the Hong Kong Airline and in the New Kowloon south of Boundary Street are ceded permanently, to the Britain with a land lease of 999 years. So for those places, you can spare the government rent, but for another areas such as some places called the New Territories, and also those properties that is located in Kowloon north of the Boundary Street have to pay for the government rent every single year. That is like 5% of an estimated annual rental value of the property at designated valuation reference data. Because those properties, they were only rented to Britain with like 99 years back in the 1997, that when Hong Kong returned back to mainland China. So for those places, they have to pay rent to government. Even though we have to pay like in total the 8% of annual rental value of property, but every year the government would give the landlord a kind of a government rent rate concession. Probably there were another type of things we have to consider about, such as you have to pay for like the building management fee. There is like some statistics show that every year you have to pay like 8% to 12% of the estimated annual rental value of property regarded as your building management fee. You pay to support those people to present operations, some services for your building, such as clean up your buildings, hire some securities, and to keep the safety of the building, something like that. Next thing, the rent goal you have to consider about, such as the utility fees, maybe probably the electricity, the water, the gas fees, and those are next to nothing compared to the rental value of property. So we would just considering about those things. And also sometimes we have to consider about insurance. I know that in Hong Kong, just like in all the Western countries, we have to consider about paying the public insurance every single year. Public liability insurance is like insurance that we have to pay to keep the possible accident at bay. So sometimes, for example, let's say that if you have a guest and the guest, they spend time in your home, but probably you may have a heart attack or some stroke, and eventually they died in your home. If you don't have the public liability test, you have to cost arm and leg to pay high compensation for those deceased people's family or something like that. But if you buy the public liability test, this means that you can exempt from expenses. Insurance company will cover those things. Or for example, in Hong Kong, it's like the coastal city. So you have typhoon or the hurricane from time to time. Sometimes the hurricane can be so strong, and then probably sometimes if the pane, your window may just fall because of wind and accidentally fall on the street and crash on somebody's hand and kill somebody. This is like very horrible accident. If you don't buy anything like the public liability insurance, you have to pay all the compensation. However, if you have this kind of public liability insurance, so all those will be covered by the insurance company. Also, there are another type of insurance probably you have to pay, such as the fire insurance. This is also called the fire, layered, and peril insurance. It's like insurance that you can claim for loss if your home catch a fire and the fire just like damage the structure or some of those properties in your home. But this was mentioned like that fire insurance in Hong Kong doesn't cover all those losses that probably related to your properties, like your phones, cash, furniture that caused by the fire. So the fire insurance only cover those losses that are related to the damage of the structures of your building. So you want us to cover all those furnitures, the products, and the jewelries, and those type of things, you have to buy another insurance. Is called the home insurance. So every year you have to pay those type of insurance. In average, you have to pay like approximately no more than 300 or 500 Hong Kong dollars. That is like no more than 80 US dollars per month. So I think this is almost next to nothing, so maybe we don't need to consider about those things as well. And also the next thing we have to consider about is the repair and maintenance. So sometimes you want to do some renovation in your home, especially after the previous tenant leave away. There was some tear and wear for your pipes in the toilets and the ceilings, your floor, and you have to do some renovation. Those costs that you would consider about probably. And there is another type of repair and maintenance like compulsory. Sometimes they are every maybe 5 or 6 years. The building committee, that is like the committee that consists of many landlord representatives, they would consider about do some renovation about the whole building, and maybe they want to change the old electricity circuit, change, warm out the pipes, or repaint the exterior about the whole building. So for those kind of purpose, maybe you have to pay for like the compulsory repair and maintenance fees, and so all the landlord have to split the bill. One of my colleagues, recently told me that in their home, a landlord committee required them to pay like more than 150,000 Hong Kong dollars. That is like 20,000 US dollars for change the pipes of the whole building, something like that. And because of this reason, my colleagues told me that her neighbor wanted to just sell the property because they don't want to pay the compulsory repair and maintenance fees. So maybe we have to consider about those things as well because it is compulsory. Well, the last but not the least, there is a lower material expenses we have to consider about if we rent out our property and rental income every year. That is called the rental income tax. But in Hong Kong, this is called the property tax. So in Hong Kong, we don't have the property tax like this kind of concept in United States, which is like the percentage of the current property value. In Hong Kong, there is another type of property tax. It's like percentage of annual rental value of property. It's like 50% of your real rental income every single year. When we consider about calculating the annual rental income tax, there is like a tax exemption. That is 20% of your annual rental income. That is like statutory deduction 20% of your annual rental income. And after that, we can only deduct the government rates. That is only the deductible parts. And after the statutory deduction 20% and also the government rates, we can reach the net accessible value. And then you use this net accessible value to times the 15% tax rate, and then we can come to the amount that they have to pay to the government. Property, you have noticed that if you own a property by yourself and you have to pay the annual rental income tax, those rental outgoings are non-deductible expenses. The only deductible expenses is the government rates. This means that all those repair and maintenance, your insurance, your commission to rent out a property, and the government rents, and all those things are non-deductible expenses. So in all, if we consider all about those type of things, maybe you would just realize that every year, maybe we can get 2.5% annual return. But when we consider about all those expenses, such as the government rental rates, the building management fees, insurance, the utility fees, and the rental income tax, maybe we can only get no more than 1.7% annual return every single year. And this is the calculation that I do not even consider about repair and maintenance fees. This means that if we hold a property in Hong Kong, this is not a really good investment because I can only get 1.7% every single year. Maybe we can enjoy the increase of the property appreciation, but it's something that it is uncertain. So considering about the future cash flow, this is lower than depositing all the monies in banks. Actually, there are certain ways that we have to consider about reduce the rental income tax. That is, you don't own the property by yourself. You open the limited company that you use this company to hold the properties rather than you yourself holding the property. In this way, for those companies, they don't need to pay the rental income tax every single year. Instead, what they have to pay is like the profit tax for the company that are operating and they gain the rental income. That is like 16.5% of your profit every single year. However, all those rental outgoings are deductible expenses for you. So let's say in this year you have a property in Hong Kong that was $1 million US, and you have rental income like 25,000 US every single year. Even though you have this kind of rental income, maybe you have some expenses, rent goings and commission for you to pay for property agent, help you to rent out the property. And in this year, maybe your landlord committee ask you to pay a lump sum of repair and maintenance fees. And all those fees are deductible expenses. And when you minus all those expenses, you find that you maybe have no profit for this company this year. This means that you don't need to have to pay the tax for this year, and this helps to save the annual rental income tax for the property. So this is like a good thing for you. At least you can save a certain amount of money. But when you use a company to hold a property in Hong Kong, maybe there is a certain type of transaction tax if you want to sell the company or something like that. But this is not a story, and maybe next time we would consider about those things as well. In total, I have to say that if we want to hold a property in Hong Kong to earn the rental income, I think that to some extent you can only get a relatively low rate of return every single year. That would be less than 2% annual return every single year compared to another type of investment opportunities. So when we hold a property in Hong Kong, the ultimate purpose for us to do this investment is that we have a optimistic attitude towards the Hong Kong real estate market. We believe that we can enjoy a relatively high increase in the property value in the future. Otherwise, if you are not optimistic about the Hong Kong market properly, I think this is not a good investment choice for you to invest in the Hong Kong property. Especially in Hong Kong, if you are a foreigner, you have to pay like 20% foreign tax if you want to buy the property in Hong Kong. So that is another story as well. Maybe next time we'd like to talk about those as well. Well, this is the end of the video. If you like my video, you hit the thumb up. If you enjoy what I'm sharing with you, please subscribe me. And if I have any questions or comments, please leave a message. So, bye.